Hello and welcome to this video, or welcome back to the channel if you've been here before. And in this video I want to talk about resistance, especially resistance after the definition of Steven Pressfield. I've been listening to his audiobooks or reading his books the last couple of years, and I find his work really impressive, and it resonates with me a lot when it comes to resistance. I want to kind of be a little bit more specific on what he means by resistance, and he talks specifically about inner resistance. So in German we actually have a word for what he describes as inner resistance. It's called Schweinehund, or innerer Schweinehund, like the own pig dog, so to speak. Doesn't really make sense in English, but it's basically a force within yourself that you have to overcome to do something that's out of your comfort zone. And most of the time, according to Steven Pressfield, that power or that force shows up to you when there is something really meaningful to be done for you. He also states that the stronger that force is, and the more of an effect it has on you, the more meaningful that kind of situation is for you. So he can even kind of assess a situation by how strong that force is showing up to him. And he says, after so many decades of encountering that force and being aware of it, and not kind of writing a book about it and then looking back in his life, it's something that he describes as an ongoing battle, his words. So he kind of sees it as a battle that you have to fight with your inner resistance. These are not really words that I would use, but I appreciate where he's coming from, and I understand what he means with it. So it's basically, to kind of now take that into my own world, is very interesting that there is always with every force there's a counter force, right? In the universe, it's a universal law. And I feel like if you are trying to get out of your comfort zone, what does that mean? Let's deconstruct that. So the comfort zone is everything that you do without much force, right? Like it's just standard things that you just do on a day-to-day basis, that you get really comfortable with. But if you do something out of your comfort zone, that means that you probably need to activate other parts of your being to overcome certain discomfort, right? And we can then, for example, say that that is a force. And because you are using that force to get through that discomfort, there will be automatically a counterforce. And that counterforce, according to Steven Pressfield, or how he coins it, is called resistance. I want to call it specifically inner resistance, because I also want to kind of see resistance as kind of different parts that have different alterations in life. And what I, for example, would consider outer resistance in, for example, relationship dynamics, in any sort of dynamic between people, I feel like it's a different force. So let's call this inner resistance. And this inner resistance often manifests as fear or procrastination, which is one of the main manifestations, I guess, for most people, and self-doubt, which is obviously very common too. And not to say that fear is not common, but especially in that situation, in that topic of the inner resistance, I feel like what most people feel is procrastination. Of course, the fear is the kind of the thing that they encounter at first, right? Like that keeps people stuck. Oh, thoughts come into your head and then you stop doing something, or you're not actually following through on something. But procrastination obviously is very common. These three, fear, procrastination, and self-doubt, are kind of the manifestations of that inner resistance, or more to say, like the consequences of it. And he keeps pointing out that resistance, even though you might be aware of it, or if you're not, you might be able to get to that stage of awareness and actually putting it in its place and seeing it for what it is, and overcoming it. He points out that every time it will still show up, and it has shown up for him consistently throughout his life. And I think it's probably something that we all feel, even though we might not put that name of resistance, or what I would call it, inner resistance, to that feeling. But we all encounter it, right? So that's very interesting, and it's kind of in the interesting bit is I find that it kind of intensifies with that really important work. So everything that's really important to you, to your heart, to your soul, to your higher self, like something that is really at the core of your experience here, then that feeling of resistance intensifies, as if there's so much at stake. So I'm not sure if you felt it before, or can relate, or at least know someone. If you didn't have that feeling before yourself, maybe you can relate, because you've seen it in other people. And the interesting thing is, the number one cure, or the only way to overcome it, is literally by taking action. And this is one of the things that Steven Pressfield will keep encouraging people in his books to face it, and that it will always come up, to not kind of be naive about it, that it will not show up anymore, especially in the creative endeavors. So that, since he is an author himself, this is kind of what he tailors also his books towards. But he also mentions that this applies to everyone in any pursuit. It's just that in creative endeavors it does seem to show up a little bit more frequent, and probably more intense, I can imagine. So the big takeaways here for me are that inner resistance will be there. It will always show up. Even if you've overcome it in the past, doesn't mean that, okay, this is done, I've ticked the box, this will not show up anymore in my life. Even if it hasn't shown up in a while, it might show up later on again, in a completely different situation. So that's something to keep in mind. And I think by being aware of it, and even kind of seeing it for what it is, that's, you can even, I find it sometimes funny with inner pursuits to like picture something as like funny. If you want to picture it as an animal and with a funny name or something like that. I feel like sometimes when you make it a little bit more funny and playful and even ridiculous to some degree, I find it makes it easier to face certain things in your inner world. When you see, okay, that's just Hubert being angry again, or something like that. You know what I mean? If you just come up with certain funny ways of looking at parts of yourself, and then kind of humor yourself, this will help a lot in facing it. And then also seeing it for what it is, and it's like, okay, it just wants me to stay in this place, because this is essentially what this force is trying to do. It's not ill-intended. It's human nature, and we've been biologically wired like that, to kind of have, that feeling that it's better to stay who you are and what you're doing. So everything should stay as it is. And that's kind of what the inner resistance is trying to accomplish, to keep you and your life exactly how it is, because everything else is scary. And back, obviously, in different times, it probably would have been actually scary to do something else and face certain dangers. And this is kind of where maybe that force had some merit to it, which nowadays probably in most cases isn't there anymore. Of course, there are things where you feel like, okay, maybe I want to run on the street without looking, and then that force is telling you probably not. That's a good thing. But when it comes to inner pursuits, I find it obviously most of the time doesn't serve us, and kind of to recognize and question. I think that's always a good indicator to kind of question things and then feel how it feels for you, have the feeling at the center of it all, and then you can go through with it. And these are kind of the different steps there. So it's about recognizing it, it's about actually taking action, which is the one thing that gets you through that inner resistance. This is the only way to see that in the back mirror, is by actually doing the thing that you are scared of doing or that you are putting off. Lastly, I also want to encourage you, if you want to dive deeper into the topic, the books that I read so far from Steven Pressfield are The War of Art, Turning Pro, and Do the Work. I know that he has obviously other works out there as well, but these are the three that I've read and I found very helpful. I'm pretty sure you will as well. And this is kind of it. I hope you get some value from this. Let me know if you do, and share your own thoughts, and maybe you've experienced something like this yourself, and if you do, maybe you can share your experience with it. That will probably help other people as well. Okay, with that, I leave it as is, and I will wish you a wonderful day, and I will see you next week. See ya.